When I was in 5th grade, I had a geography teacher who often talked about recycling, reusing, and saving the planet. I liked the teacher and how she would get when she was inspired about something. Inspired by her, I took an old dictionary and salvaged it by gluing the torn pages together and making it a hardcover. Afterwards, I started carrying this little dictionary I'd grown so fond of to the school. A day came when the same teacher asked if somebody had a dictionary with them, and I raised my hand. When I gave it to her, of course, in excitement to see her response, she gave it a dirty, disapproving look. At first I didn't get it, and then it became clear. Her look said, "Wow, look at this patched up little thing. What a middle-class thing to do." The social status game, as Naval Ravikant puts it, is a zero-sum game. You don't win without making others lose. Everyone plays the social status game, whether one accepts it or not. It is a game you don't get to not play. You can only control the extent to which you want to play it and let it influence your life. Think about the things you consider cool and admirable, and almost certainly they will be attached to a higher social status. The clothes you would want to wear, the way you would want to talk, the things you would like to be associated with. The enormity of the influence of this social game in our lives cannot be overstated. Everywhere we go, we see the social cues and how strictly this game is regulated. There's a social barometer in our head that not only keeps track of our place in the social hierarchy, but also judges the social standing of everyone we see. Think about how easy and intuitive it is for this barometer to judge. For the way one dresses, to the way one speaks, the social cues are so abundant that we can judge a person in seconds without ever meeting them in person. The subliminal things we do to accommodate ourselves to this social game speak for this game's subconscious hold in our daily lives. The way we carry ourselves in public, the words we choose and do not choose to speak. Furthermore, you cannot be seen adjusting to the social cues. You are supposed to just know it, which is why you can only talk about the social status game from the top down, not the bottom up, lest you want to be judged. This keeps us all in check, all conforming. Also, when one claims to not fit in, it is generally in the purview of what's hip in the culture. Look at the way they sell us things. Cool people use this product. Unless you're not cool, you'll use it too. The strategy is to invoke the fear of missing out at best and inferiority at worst, and sell us things as we run to overcome this insecurity. There is a sleight of hand at play here. Ideally, we should go, "Well, thanks, but no thanks," but analogous to the decoy effect in which we are influenced to choose without really knowing it. Here, by invoking insecurity, we are made to get so busy either following through or debating if one is better than the other that we never notice and question whether the reality around which our opinions are forming makes any sense or not. This way, mindlessly, following through establishes itself as the norm, and the one stopping and thinking for oneself becomes the black sheep, when ideally it should be the other way around. We never stop and ask, "Hold on a second. Who said it's cool to begin with? Who said it's cool? Only this way and not some other way. After all, there wasn't any divine intervention. Are you sure we consider specific things cool on our own and not because we are taught to consider them so?" And going a step further, isn't it the case that the very people selling us things also have a monopoly on deciding what's cool and what's not? Perhaps I'm being a bit cynical, but it's of extreme importance to see the social game for what it is. Consider this. The kind of acceptance you are looking for when imagining your ideal way of talking, dressing, and living. Suppose you get it in your present form, without any accommodation or masking. Think about the release it would have on your life when you don't have to double-check and conform, when you're let off the constant watch of the social game. Think about the freedom it will give you, how empowering it would be for you and your sense of self-worth. This is what the social game has taken away from you. Now, let's talk a little bit about the factor of whose judgment we are suspending our mind. Since we've suspended our faculty of judgment to this external factor, we are no longer in control and therefore are anxious. But what is this wise external thing that we've deemed fitter than us to judge for ourselves? It is the product of our collective living together, a spirit of our society, so to say. If a person agrees to take the judgment of this societal force over his own, he is indirectly saying that he has more faith in the external judgment than in himself. This in itself may not be a problem except when one realizes how humanly fallible this external factor really is. Our society doesn't really have a spotless repertoire. Its history is entrenched in wars, genocides, slavery, serfdom, riots, lynching, and what have you. For a long time, slavery, capital punishment, the burning of witches, and the Inquisition were acceptable everyday events. Do we really believe that we know what we are doing? Can we afford not to question this? Isn't it the case that we are accommodating ourselves to the arbitrary whims of other people? And aren't we selling ourselves way too cheap? The social class hierarchies are so intrinsically interrelated with other hierarchies that one is used to stand for the other many times. Economic hierarchy almost always resembles the social class hierarchy. The rich are the upper class and the poor the lower class. Also, those who are exceptionally good at doing particular tasks, from top-notch surgeons to sportsmen, enjoy a higher place in the social hierarchy. Because of such interactions, sometimes one hierarchy is falsely justified in place of the other. For example, is the iPhone better than the rest because of its technological innovation or because upper classes use it? Is it the case that Ronaldo uses Nike shoes because they are good, or are they good because Ronaldo uses them? You must have by now noticed the religious connotations here. Religion also requires the suspension of one's own belief and finding things out for oneself for the set of beliefs mandated by the religion. Shopping, after all, has been called the modern religious experience. Also, the social class game can be considered as a less rigid caste system. You are born into it, and unless you get very rich, it's hard for people to look beyond it. This, by the way, also shows the poison of the caste system in practice. The caste system mandates that the external factor that we talked about isn't man-made, but is God himself. And it is the mandate of God that the person of one caste is superior to the other. Another critique of this external judging factor is that today's lower class thing may become higher class tomorrow and vice versa. If that is the case, there is a significant factor of arbitrariness at play here. Let me give an example. Indians have exceptional eco-friendly heritage that's been passed over for generations. We save and reuse a lot of stuff that we use. The containers of Bonvita being reused to store some other ingredient comes to mind as an example. This, of course, has middle-class connotations attached to it. But now, since being environmentally friendly and reusing stuff is increasingly being considered hip in the upper echelons, the same thing done by the upper class will be considered as an act of class, even though the middle class and lower class have been doing it for generations. For a long time in human history, information and knowledge were limited to the ruling class. The YouTube channel Academy of Ideas succinctly puts the interplay of technological innovations and the subsequent changes in the political landscape. It is said that politics is downstream from culture, that culture, in other words, determines the kind of rule that emerges in the society. But one could also say that culture is downstream from technology. Technological innovations, by creating new possibilities for how we interact with the world, change culture. All of the technological revolutions that engender cultural changes in communication technologies are among the most impactful. For these technologies sculpt the flow of information, and information is power. Information directs our focus and so helps shape our perception of reality. Information demonstrates what is possible and so influences how we act. And in the political realm, information legitimizes or delegitimizes a ruling class structure. Change the communication technology and you change the flow of information. Change the flow of information and you change the culture. Change the culture and you change the political status quo. The invention of the Gutenberg printing press in the 15th century and the rise of mass media, of radio and television in the 20th century are two examples where technological revolutions changed the way information was produced and disseminated. Needless to say, the way information is broadcasted in a society greatly influences the social attributes that are considered desirable. Before the rise of the internet, the social class generated the information echoed their own class preferences, which then were consumed and followed by the rest of the society. What was considered socially desirable was, this way, dictated top down. Since the internet allows anyone to broadcast, it can be a revolutionary tool with which different social classes can express themselves more freely and authentically and own back their control on the social game. No longer do you only get to consume content that was created by a certain social class. The internet renders various age-old social and cultural methods of gatekeeping redundant. And while there are such clear advantages of the internet, there are many ways in which it can be disadvantages. Social media apps like Instagram are repeatedly criticized for their role in growing anxiety and body image problems among teenagers. To conclude, we are at a point in history where technological tools can both work for and against us as a social species. For a person to indeed be an individual that is independent in the modern world, they have to understand how they've given their control over to an external factor and take back their control, and say that there's no external higher wisdom that's keeping an eye on the human affairs, that no one but I will judge for myself. This was more of a subjective take on the effects of the social game on an individual. In the next video, I will explore its effects on Indian culture as a whole. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends and family. Since this is a new channel, the smallest of help will go a long way. Thanks for watching.